Welcome to this unit where I want to briefly explain how we have to process our data if we conducted a choice experiment, for example with an online survey platform like SoSurvey, and we want later to analyze this data using something like the Apollo package from R. Well, in either case, I assume you have data which looks something similar to this version here. So in our example, I had 72 choice cards, and each participant had to evaluate 8 of them, and those 8 were randomly drawn from the 72. So the information I get is first off back here, those randomly drawn 8 choice card per participant. So in this short illustration, I just used part of a sample with only 7 participants. So each of the 7 participants got 8 choice cards. Regarding the choice cards, they had the possibility to choose option 1, option 2, or opt out, meaning select neither of the two. Here, and in the first part, are the answers. If there is a 1, they selected the first version. If there is a 2, they selected the second version. And if there's a 3, they selected neither of the two options. So this is the first part we would have as raw data. In a, first preparatory step, which however is independent of the data set as such, we would have to have an overview on our general choice design. What do I mean by this? Well, I have 72 choice cards, so I have to give an overview on all 72 choice cards. That's what I'm doing here in this sheet called choice design. So each of the 72 choice cards has more or less 3 options in our example. We had the first option where participants see either products with no Nutri-Score, with an A Nutri-Score, a C, or an E Nutri-Score. Then another one was showing them another label, the so-called Nutri-Inform, and either this label was there or it wasn't. And finally, they had 3 different prices. Well, the first 2, Nutri-Score, Nutri-Inform, those are nominal variables. So here I'm going to note all the different levels per attribute, which are not the base attribute or the base level. With Nutri-Score, the no Nutri-Score is present, is the base, the default version. So here I make one variable for all the 3 alternatives, Nutri-Score A, C, and E. With the Nutri-Inform, it could either be not there or be displayed. So the not being there is the default, so I have only one variable, Nutri-Score is present. With the prices, I have 3 alternatives, but it's a metric variable. So here, instead of writing down 0 or 1, I'm just going to note the respective prices which I used. Of course, if you have a different design, you might have more or less variables and then also have to adjust some of the numbers in the later processing. But in this regard, it looks like this. And well, with this preparation, we can turn to the second part we have to prepare. And that is for each choice, so for all 8 choices which the participants faced, we have to first make a new choice variable. The idea of these choice variables is that we summarize for the first choice which of the 2 options or the opting out option did the participant choose. How about the second, third, fourth choice and so forth, and how about the other participants? So in other words, what we want to do here, let's start with first participant, first choice. Here he got shown card 32. So we want Excel to go 33, so go to the front, check 32, check 32, see there's a 1, and take this one and note it here. And do it for all the other participants in the same way. So with choice 2, look up what is actually stored in 33. Well, that's a lot of work to be done already only for the choice decisions. So we're going to use Visual Basic later on to make it much, much easier. Well, but we're not yet finished with the preparation. So in addition to the 8 choice cards, for each of the 8 choices, we need to have one set of the variables which we had for the choice designs. So here we had 10 different variables, 5 each per alternative that the participants could choose from. So we have the whole first choice situation, the whole first choice card, which the participant faced first. For this, we actually need the information of the respective choice card. As I said, first choice, first participant is card 32. So what I want to have here in those first 10 values is the information for choice card 32. So I want him to go look, okay, first choice card 32, go to choice design, say, okay, 32, that's here, and then copy those 10 values at this situation. Again, a lot of work if we do this by hand, but it can be done much faster with Visual Basic. Well, that's all the preparatory work we have to do. Of course, here, if I have 8 choices with 10 variables each, so I have to make 80 variables. Even this already is quite a lot of work, but I can make my life a bit easier by simply going back to the choice design, selecting here the respective variable names, pasting them once here, and then just adding something like underline 1 for the first choice card. If I now just pull this over here, Excel will replace the underline 1 with an underline 2. So that's an easy way to very fast generate my 80 variables which I require. Well, with all these variables prepared, we can turn to Visual Basic and how we actually fill those empty cells quite fast. Well, first off, I need some variables. Then I start with the first part with those choice cards. So what I'm telling him here, for each participant, participants are noted in rows 3 to 9. So for each participant from 3 to 9, and for all 8 possible choice cards to consider, do the following thing. In this field here, which is in row K, so it's the respective participant, starting at 81 plus I, 81 is this field here, so CC actually is 81, and then do this plus I for all 8 possible choices. So this just means start here and then go through all this. What he should do is take a look at this value here. This value here is this one here. 72 starts here. That's actually the answer for choice card 72. Plus 1 for the first version. Take this value, go to to column 32, and take this value and put it here. So this just means take this value, go to the respective cell in column 32. That's why this cell is again in a cell command where the columns are mentioned. What do you have to adjust? Well, if you have more than 72 choice cards or less, this would have to be different, and of course you might start at a different point here, so you might have to adjust this and this. If you have more participants, adjust this frame. If you have more choices per participant, adjust this one here. Well, if we would execute this, this would fill in this part on the choices. What about the other parts here? Well, that's a little bit more complicated, even though the first part starts similar. For all participants, for all 8 choice cards, I have to copy 10 values because, well, it's 2 times 5 variables. So I have to copy 10 values. So that's why I have 1 to 10. Again, if you have a different choice design, might have to copy more values here as well. Since I'm now working with 2 worksheets, data and choice design, I opted to put the worksheets and the name before the cells to make it much clearer. So here I want him to go in the respective row of the participant we're considering, and there go to 89. That's actually here this part, 89, so the last point before the first one starts, plus J, so he starts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so forth. And this repeats after 10 columns. So what I have to tell him, since it repeats 8 times, if you're in the second, add 10 to this. If you're in the third, add 20 to it. How am I doing this? Well, the 10 is the 10 possibilities here. And then, since I have here with I my 8 different possibilities, I'm going to multiply the 10 with I minus 1. So for the first one, it's actually 0, so nothing is added. So I start directly here. But for the next one, if I'm at choice card 2, I have 2 minus 1 times 10, so I'm starting 10 in the back. So this part describes where I'm actually going to start. This part here then switches to choice design. In choice design, it looks up the respective row where I have this part here. This is again the same value here. So this is exactly the same thing as I used in this situation. So he will look up the row 32. Since if I go to choice card, I have here one row with the variable names, I have to add +1 in this situation. And then just copy j plus 1. So starting at 1 here till 11 here, that's 10 possibilities, but starting at the second. And then, well, he copies all of this, fills in this rest of the table. Well, let's have a look how this turns out if I execute this subroutine. Click OK, and you see it works relatively fast. So here I have the respective choices. If I go to the back, that's actually the answers for the design of the respective choice cards. So that's for all of the choice cards used as first choice card. And here it doesn't matter that it's starting with 32, 33, and then only 9 and then 30 again. So the order doesn't matter. This works for any kind of order. And as we see, it filled consistently the whole set up to the end. Those information, well, at this point, I have 8 variables for choices. I need only a single one. So at this point, I'm more or less finished with the data pre-processing. And what I have to do next is to transform this wide data set into a long data set. But there's different tutorials for this, how I can easily do this with SPSS or with R. And well, I could also just copy this, put this down here, copy this, put this down here, but this would be quite tedious work, so I would rather do this with R or SPSS. So this brings me to the end of this session. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, and I say goodbye and see you next time.